There are two confirmed Omicron cases in the country. Great Britain is tightening its entry rules now for travelers from all over the world in view of the newly discovered corona variant Omicron. All arrivals must take a PCR test on day 2 after their entry and go into quarantine until they receive a negative test result. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced, "We have to go further and impose a new test regime." The regulation also applies regardless of the vaccination status and should be checked after 3 weeks. In the future, a mask requirement will apply again in shops and means of transport. So far, fully vaccinated people from most countries only had to do a rapid test after entering the country, but no longer had to go into quarantine. After several other countries, 2 cases of the Omicron variant were found in Great Britain yesterday. Health Minister Sajid Javid said 2 related cases had been discovered that were linked to a trip to southern Africa. The people concerned and their households are in quarantine. The contact follow-up is ongoing. The Omicron variant, which was first detected in South Africa and Botswana, has been classified by the World Health Organization (WHO) as worrying. Despite the worsening situation, the British government is not yet implementing its Plan B, which is intended for an emergency. This provides for vaccination certificates at major events and the recommendation to work from home. Apart from the stricter entry rules, Great Britain continues to say that there are hardly any corona measures like in Germany. Belgium was the first country in Europe to report a confirmed case of infection with the new Omicron variant on Friday. On Saturday evening, Bavaria confirmed 2 cases of infection with the new variant. Italy confirmed 1 case. To curb the spread of the new Omicron variant of the coronavirus, Israel is closing its borders to foreigners. According to Israeli media reports, the coronavirus cabinet decided these and other restrictions. The new restrictions were due to come into force this Sunday evening. Vaccinated Israelis will also be isolated on return. An Omicron case is currently confirmed in Israel and 7 cases are being investigated. For the time being, all people returning to Israel from any country, including vaccinated Israelis, must be isolated for 3 days when entering Israel, as reported by the Jerusalem Post. The travelers would be tested at the airport and would have to quarantine themselves and be subject to a PCR test on the 3rd day and should only leave the isolation if the result is negative. Unvaccinated Israelis would have to be isolated for 7 days if the test was negative. All foreigners who received an entry permit to Israel would have to be quarantined in a state coronavirus hotel. In view of the new variant, numerous countries, including Germany, had already announced entry restrictions. According to the federal government, South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Mozambique, Eswatini, Malawi, and Lesotho are now considered virus variant areas, meaning that airlines are essentially only allowed to carry German citizens or people living in Germany from there to Germany. But it's not a flight ban. A 2-week quarantine obligation applies to those entering the country, including those who have been vaccinated and those who have recovered. It cannot be shortened by negative tests either. Because of the newly discovered Omicron variant of the coronavirus, Great Britain, as I said, is doing more. They are now calling an emergency meeting of G7 health ministers. This should take place today when I'm filming this. It was set in London. Great Britain currently holds the rotating chairmanship of the 7 major industrial nations. And in Europe, more and more cases of corona infections with the new virus variant were found over the weekend. After Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Great Britain, and Italy, the mutant was also detected in France with 8 suspected cases and in the Netherlands. There, 61 of around 600 flight passengers from South Africa tested positive for corona. The Omicron variant has now been confirmed in at least 13 of them. To protect against the Omicron variant, numerous countries, including Germany and other EU member states, restricted air traffic with South Africa and other countries in the region. As I said, Israel closed its borders to all foreign travelers, and Morocco suspended all air traffic for an initial 2 weeks. The British government reacted to the discovery of the new coronavirus variant Omicron from South Africa with a, let's say, moderate reintroduction of everyday restrictions. Prime Minister Boris Johnson spoke on Saturday of the goal of buying time until scientists found out more about the worrisome variant of the virus. So far, as I said, 2 Omicron cases have been recorded in the kingdom. And the British must now wear masks again in public transport and in shops. The travel conditions have been tightened, as I said in the start of the video. Health Minister Sajid Javid assured the BBC on Sunday that the situation nowhere near calls for further action. It is the first tightening of requirements in a long time. They had been phased out in steps since March and largely abolished in July. With the package, the government remains under its Plan B, with which it wants to respond to excessive demands of the health system. This would also provide for a recommendation to work from home, as well as possible obligations to provide proof of vaccination, which is very controversial in the UK. Javid justified the tightening on Sunday, which was surprisingly cautious for some, with the words that a return to homework, work at home and contact restrictions is associated with high economic and social costs, but also having implications for mental health. For many Brits, the mask requirement does not mean a change because they have voluntarily worn mouth and nose protection in the past few months. A change for double and triple vaccinated persons, on the other hand, means the obligation to self-isolate for 10 days if one has to come into contact with a new virus variant. Fully vaccinated travelers are also affected by the new regulations. From today on, everyone must book an expensive PCR test for the second day after arrival before entering the country, as I said, and remain in quarantine at home until a negative result. And the government stopped flight connections to 10 African countries. Returnees from these countries have to stay in a quarantine hotel for 10 days. The swift but mild response reflects the government's political dilemma. The modeler Mike Tilsley, whose results are part of the decision-making basis for the ministers in London, put it this way on Sunday. If you don't take measures and then it turns out that Omicron is really bad, you have reacted too late. If they take measures and it turns out that Omicron is no more dangerous than Delta, they are under fire for introducing unnecessary requirements. Tilsley dared to predict that Christmas would be better than last. A year ago, it was still forbidden to mix 2 households. But this is quite politically easy. Tens of thousands took to the streets in Austria to protest against corona measures. The demonstrations were peaceful, but still there were many advertisements going on. Around 40,000 people took to the streets in Austria during protests against corona measures and the planned mandatory vaccination. The largest of the demonstrations took place in Graz on Saturday. The police reported that up to 30,000 participants marched through Austria's second largest city with chants like "Peace, freedom, no dictatorship." Mostly peaceful gatherings were also held in St. Pölten, Klagenfurt and Innsbruck. However, many people were reported for not wearing masks. The government in Vienna wants to introduce a general compulsory vaccination in February. A draft law with details of the regulation is to be presented in the second week of December. A lockdown has been in effect across the country since last Monday. There were already mass demonstrations last weekend because of the measures in Vienna. In Austria, the 7-day incidence has fallen slightly for a few days to 1,030 new infections per 100,000 inhabitants. And the traffic light parties in Germany want to use a corona crisis team in the fight against the pandemics. It is now reportedly clear who will lead it. A Bundeswehr general will be the head of the new corona crisis team. This is what the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung and the magazine Spiegel report. According to the reports, it should be Major General Carsten Breuer. He is the commander of the Bundeswehr Territorial Task Command, which is responsible for domestic operations by the armed forces. Breuer is familiar with disasters and the pandemic. He has been coordinating the Bundeswehr's tasks in the context of the pandemic aid since 2020. This also included the deployment of several thousand soldiers in various areas such as health departments, care facilities and hospitals. Under his command, the Bundeswehr helped with snow and flood disasters. He is used to acting quickly and providing resources and personnel, he told the German newspaper Welt in December. During his career, Breuer served as Brigadier General in Afghanistan and was later transferred to the Ministry of Defense. There, he was initially responsible in the Department for Security Policy. The then Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen later entrusted him with updating the White Paper, an overview of current and future tasks of the Bundeswehr. Since 2018, he has been the head of the Territorial Task Command in Berlin. The liberal politician Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann welcomed the decision. She said, "I'm pleased with this decision to let General Breuer head the Corona crisis team in the Federal Chancellery," she tweeted, "and an excellent man with great expertise in such situations." The Green member of the Bundestag, Dr. Tobias Lindner, called Breuer an excellent choice on Twitter. He had visited him at his operations center a year ago. The German Association of Cities has requested the municipalities to participate in the planned permanent Corona crisis team in the Chancellery. The new Corona crisis team has to start immediately, and the cities belong to the table, said City Council President Markus Lewe from the Christian Democrats to the newspapers of the Funke Media Group on Monday. With the new virus variant Omikron, the situation is getting worse. Quick decisions are necessary. Markus said, "The expertise of the cities is indispensable for this, because this is where the work is done and the corona measures are implemented on site." And he emphasized, the time of federal state summits on corona should now be over. Incidentally, Markus is the Lord Mayor here in my hometown of Münster, and he's a very competent and very nice guy. The Corona crisis team planned by the Future Traffic Light Coalition could start work in the next few days, and thus before the government of the Social Democrats, the Green and the Liberals takes office. Liberal Party leader Christian Lindner announced that the staff would meet in the coming week. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.